Now this third overturning is for the third family member given the 400-year blessing and curse covenant. It goes to Jacob the supplanter. Jacob is called the supplanter because he was the only one of the three family members out of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob who took both the birthright and blessing away from Esau, and he was the only one ever accused of being the supplanter. As it is written, Jacob has supplanted me these 2 times, as written in Genesis chapter 27 verse 36. Genesis 27 verse 36. If you'll notice that Jacob is the last and third family member of the covenant. The covenant actually ends with Jacob. Why? Because Jacob the supplanter represents the timeline at the end of the world, when a man, a human being from the same bloodline as those who spent 430 years in Egypt, will be born having the same function as Jacob the supplanter. This man will be sent by Yahshua himself to supplant the supplanters. Yahshua will send this man to return both the birthright and the blessing back to the real Israel. This man will actually be Emannu'el branch, one chosen by Yahshua the Messiah. In other words, this is a timeline manifested in an unbroken bloodline. So allow me to let you in on a little secret. Once the real Israel, the natural branches, were broken off, and a replacement Israel, that wild olive branch, was grafted in, the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was actually broken. Remember, it's Abraham's descendants that shall bless all nations, not the wild olive branch, you see? Now, to benefit the whole world, Yahshua the Messiah had to pay the price in his own blood to return the covenant back to the real Israel. So he had to suffer at least 15 grievous curses at the cross. And here's a mystery. Each curse that Yahshua suffered was a sign and a wonder upon him that must be eaten and drank by the real Israel also. In other words, the real Israel must endure the very same horrors as Yahshua the Messiah during the final 400 years of affliction. So this period will be from 1565 to this present time. And this is how you will identify the real Israel, not through racism, but through scripturism, lining up the precepts within the scriptures to find the truth. So, like Moses, before Yahshua died, Yahshua prophesied how the curses will befall the real Israel in the latter days. You see, Moses talked it, but Yahshua walked it. Moses talked the curses, but Yahshua walked the curses, becoming the curses himself. And the curses are found in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 15 through 68. Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to 68. Read them. Learn these curses. Now let's be obedient, and let's go to the law and to the prophets as we're told to do. Now, to the law we find Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 45 and 46. Deuteronomy 28, verses 45 and 46, where it reads, "All these curses shall come upon thee, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." Here's a mystery. These curses shall be upon thee, and they shall be upon thy seed. Thy seed, we find out in Galatians 3:16, is Yahshua the Messiah. Galatians 3:16 reveals that thy seed, singular, represents Yahshua the Messiah, meaning that the curses will be both upon Yahshua and the 12 tribes of Israel. Let's see if we can find a prophet to confirm the exact same thing. We find in Isaiah 8:18 the same thing that Moses wrote. Isaiah 8:18 says, "Behold, I and the children whom Yahweh hath given me are for signs and wonders in Israel." The same thing. I is Yahshua the Messiah, and the children of Israel, are for signs and wonders equally. That means they have a shared history of the same curses that will be seen upon each other. Precept must be upon precept, line upon line. So that means in the last 400 years of our history, you shall see the same curses, but this time on the 12 tribes of Israel. So let's back up the clock 400 years to the year 1565, and let's see if Yahshua's curses are not seen on this group of people. Curse number 1 that Yahshua suffered. Yahshua was betrayed by his own brethren, Judas, which means for 400 years this bloodline would have a history of disunity, distrust, self-hate, a history of working against one another. Curse number 2. Yahshua was sold for 30 pieces of silver. We find out that 30 pieces of silver is a price of a slave, typifying that the same bloodline will have a 400-year history of being slaves among many nations. Curse number 3, Joshua received no justice in 4 courts, meaning Joshua was arrested by the Jewish Pharisees, received no justice in their court. They sent him to Pilate. Pilate then sent him to Herod. Herod sent him back to Pilate. 4 courts, no justice, showing a 400-year history where there would be no justice in the court for this group of people. They have unfair trials, longer prison terms than any other group. They have more death sentences than any other group. Curse number 4, Joshua had false witnesses to testify against him. What does it mean? The same bloodline for 400 years will have a history of being falsely accused, a history of having trumped up charges, innocent people being condemned by lying testimony. Curse number 5, Joshua was beaten while in custody by the Roman guards. These Roman centurions represent police officers, showing you for 400 years the real Israel will be beaten by police, have a history of police brutality, police harassment. Their innocent men will be gunned down by police officers, and there will be no justice for them. Curse number 6, Joshua was bullwhipped in public like an animal, like a dog, showing you that for 400 years these same people will be tied down, having their backs ripped open by a whip. They will be bullwhipped in public like a dog, like a mule, like an ox. Woe unto this generation. Curse number 7, Joshua was hated without a cause, rejected, and spat on. What does this typify? It shows that for 400 years, the real bloodline of Joshua the Messiah will be so hated and so rejected by this world that they will be restricted from public lunch counters, restricted from libraries, rejected from going to the swimming pools, the voting booths, rejected from basic freedoms. Curse number 8, Joshua was stripped naked, showing you that for 400 years his bloodline will be stripped of everything, stripped of their dignity, their humanity, stripped of their history, stripped of their family names, of opportunity, of justice and equality. Curse number 9, Joshua's clothing was replaced with purple, and he was mocked by the Gentiles. What does it mean? In Jeremiah chapter 13, verses 1 through 11, Jeremiah 13, 1 through 11 teaches us that the clothing represents the children of Israel, which means that Joshua's clothing, the children, was stripped from him and replaced by another garment, by Gentile people, which means that the real Israel will actually be supplanted by another group of people. And it says that he was mocked by the Gentiles, which means that Joshua was mocked. He was counterfeited. Mock means to impersonate, to counterfeit. You see, to mimic. That the real Messiah will be taken down from the cross and a Gentile Messiah will be put up on the cross. Then that's when the Gentile people bowed down before him while Joshua was dressed in purple, dressed as another people, you see. But if you notice, there came a time when the Gentile clothing of purple was taken off of him and his own clothing was returned to him. You see, showing you his resurrection. Matthew 27 verses 28 to 31. Matthew 27 verses 28 through 31. Curse number 10, Joshua struggled with the cross on his back. What does this reveal? It shows that Joshua's real bloodline in the last 400-year period will have a history of struggling with back-breaking hard bondage and labor on their backs. They will scrub your floors, scrub your toilets, cook their food. They will work in the fields in the hot sun, working on their backs. You understand? They have a history, 400 years of being maids, nannies, butlers, servants. They'll be the bottom of society. Woe unto this generation.